Welcome to the Well Worshipped Man podcast, where men come to build unshakable presence, become the rock in their relationship, and build a legacy that lasts beyond their years. Here, we explore the path to mature masculinity through humble power, daily devotion, and unwavering integrity.
Thanks, baby. Before we get started, make sure that you follow the podcast, that you subscribe, and that you leave a review. It helps our message reach more of the humans that need to hear it. And today on the podcast, we have a special guest. We are in his home, his sanctuary. Alexander Schimmel is the founder of Awaken Yoga School. For the past decade, he has led retreats, yoga teacher trainings, and activations at festivals around the world, guiding thousands of students to reconnect with their truth and live from their center. His work blends ancient wisdom with modern somatics and incorporates the 4 original medicines: song, dance, storytelling, and silence.
Hey.
Hello.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for being here.
Such an honor to be in your home. So happy to have you in San Diego.
Me too.
So I thought we'd start with when you and I met. We met a little over a year ago at a retreat held by some of our friends.
Mm-hmm.
And when I met you, you were really diving into this path of calling in your beloved and really focusing your energy of like, this is where I want my energy to go. This is the energy that I want to be holding. So it's clear she can find me. And there's so much in just our culture, but also each of our paths that really create this desire for our eternal partner. And I would love to hear more about that path from you now that you've met her.
Yeah. It's funny because when I met you and we had those conversations, I had already met her. I just met her 2 weeks ago or something, 2 weeks before that. And I remember actually while you were just sharing that, some specific things that you were telling me, like live as if she's already here, and some manifestation codes. So it's funny to come full circle like this now where you're in the house that I live with Amy. That time, I feel like for me, relationship has been one of my biggest challenges in life. It's been one of my biggest initiators. I did not have the greatest model of relationship from my parents. They were amazing parents, not necessarily the most connected in their own relationship. So didn't really have a great model, and always knew I wanted to have a partner and a family, and had a lot of my own shit in the way. So I feel like a big part of it for the past 5 years, I was in a 4-year relationship that ended, I guess a few years ago now. And I just realized, I was like, wow, I'm not really equipped yet to be in a relationship, the kind of relationship that I desire. I'm definitely equipped to be in a relationship that's the ordinary relationships that we see in the world, but to really be in this like extraordinary relationship, the relationship I knew was possible. I knew there was a lot of work for me to do. And around the time that I met you, it was just after making a decision, was like celibacy is the next part of it. Mm-hmm. Celibacy is the choice I have to make. It's very easy for me to connect with people and connect with women and have these fun connections. Even in this time in my life, I was very rooted in truth and very clear with my communication and desires and boundaries and all those things. Still, it was pulling me away from what I really desired. So I'd say the first big step was celibacy, committing to it for 6 months. And it ended up being 8 months of celibacy last year. And it's actually one of the biggest blessings, because I also always prayed that the woman who is my queen, that will first have a really strong foundation of friendship. We won't go right into physical, sexual relating, because in the past that's also created some blinders in my life. And because of that commitment to celibacy, and I met Amy 2 weeks after I decided that celibacy was the path, and then we got to cultivate a really good friendship for almost a year before we decided to cross over and be more than just friends, and really move into the beautiful partnership, lovership that we're in now.
Yeah. When Jessica and I work with guys, it's this time in the desert, this time of solitude, this season of celibacy for you is something that we prescribe often. And it's not the celibacy, it's not the celibacy itself that created the space for that to arrive in your life. And you talked earlier about there being a lot of your own shit in the way of experiencing the union that you really desired. What was it about that chapter, or what was the shit within you that chapter of celibacy forced you to address?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great to realize. And even in the reflection now, it's like women in my life for a long time were a really big distraction. I would give my center to women, and that was some of the shit that came up. It was like, oh, wow, I don't have distractions. Oh, wow, I don't have this external source of validation that I really put a lot of energy into getting in my life. It was like, if I had a hot girl that was by my side, then I was worthy, then it made me hot, then it made me, more of a man. So I'd say that was a lot of it. Part of this was realizing that I need to be really centered in myself before I can call in a woman. And yeah, what I realized was I was using women for so long, even if I had really good intentions consciously, even if my heart was really open. So even as I've been on this spiritual path, still I was using these women to feel better about myself. And when I had these moments of celibacy and actually like having more opportunities to see women as sisters, for a long time, it was like, if I was attracted to a woman, I had to pursue them. I had to have more. I thought it was just the way. I thought it was what I was supposed to do. And to be able to have amazing women in my life that now are sisters and allies, not just people that I'm like pursuing to have validation, that really changed the game for me. And then I had women on my team that could give me really good reflections. And I feel like that's really powerful. Like, I love that you guys work with men, and you have both the male and the female perspective. I think that's so valuable. And for me, like, having women on my team really allowed that different perspective to come through. So I'd say that was a big one. And then just honestly, like, this is a wide range, but I'd say just insecurities. I got to really look at those insecurities, and instead of finding the Band-Aid, which would be like a casual temporary connection, it was like, okay, take the Band-Aid off, like let the wound get some air, see it, and just notice where all those insecurities were blocking me.
I think that your share about, even though I was on this spiritual path, like even though I was already doing all of this work, I was still, giving my power away or coming off of center for the women or seeking validation, because there's so much in the journey where it's like, we know, I know what it looks like to give my power away. I know what it looks like when I'm trying to mitigate discomfort, but then we get uncomfortable and we forget the teaching. And it's not always, the man dating 50 women at once that's doing that. Like, there's men in relationships that are very loving and also haven't maybe spent the time like you did to find their center so that they're not thrown off it once in partnership, because it's like, that is the beauty of the feminine. Like, she will try her best unintentionally to like throw you off center. That is like what's happening in our bodies all the time. And so learning that stability in that, period of celibacy, I'm sure is giving you infinite rewards in this partnership now, and still a challenge.
For sure.
But one of the things that Isaac and I have talked a lot about in the past few months, and, part of what you're sharing about just the way that you would engage with women before, is there's this message, this programming in our culture that, well, men are just like biologically programmed to treat women that way, basically, or to engage with women that way so that they can spread their seed. And I'd love to talk to you more about that, because, there's a lot of things that we're programmed with that they don't necessarily belong anymore. You know, just because my survival mechanism tells me to be in fight or flight all the time doesn't mean I need to be.
Right.
So I'm curious about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, my first thought is, along with that, like fight or flight, I believe that as humans, we are both animals, and there's this like higher level of consciousness that we have. And perhaps the animal of men, and we see this in the animal kingdom, is wired to spread our seed. It's survival. That is an important piece. And also, like, thank God we have this drive, because that drive can really, combined with the higher consciousness of men, having that drive to protect and provide, it's an amazing thing. But if we just let the animal be the one driving the car, then the animal is like, okay, let's spread the seed, let's survive. So I think that's one thing, just to understand that we have this piece of us that can cause us to act in a survival way, like survive it at any means, at any cost, by any means necessary. And at the same time, what I also really noticed, and there was a period after my last relationship ended, I had this 4-year relationship. It was the first woman that I dated where I was definitely living more in alignment and integrity than I had before. And I thought that it was the first time I also thought, like, okay, this is the woman I'm going to marry. 4-year relationship, a lot of challenges, a lot of mirrors, a lot of growth. After that, I was like, okay, I for sure need to be single for a while, like totally single, but it wasn't celibate. It was just single. And during that time, I was really allowing the animal part of me to connect with many women. I was traveling, I was living nomadically. And at the same time, at that point, my higher consciousness was like, great, this is amazing. This is natural. This is beautiful. It's really important for integrity pieces to be super clear. So with these women that I was connecting with, I would be super clear of, I'm not available for partnership. I'm not looking for this. This is my desire. This is my boundary. I want a connection with love. All these things that felt really in integrity. And then as it started to continue, I started to realize it was like this, I'm saying responsibility, not in a way of like a burden, but like I want to take responsibility. And I was feeling this, like, I'm responsible for a woman that I sexually connect with. Like, I'm responsible for her heart. I'm responsible for her well-being. Maybe not forever, but there's a time period. And I started to really feel that. And in that, I was like, yeah, it's not possible for me to hold so many women. I don't have the capacity for that, especially in this world where I'm also running a business and doing all the other things that I'm doing, staying healthy. So that was a really big realization for me. It was like, I could live this way. And there were very nourishing connections in that period of time for me, that couple of years that I was in my single and enjoying life experience and really communicating the way I did. It was really powerful and beautiful. And also I was just realizing, this is actually not serving the women I'm connecting with in the long run, maybe short term, sure, not really serving me in the long run. So I think that was something that I noticed, just having that deeper level of consciousness and really feeling into my heart. I realized this is not actually bringing me the fulfillment that I thought it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you shared that earlier on your path. You just felt better if you were dating a hot woman or had a roster, and it made you feel more self-assured. And I've been there too, in my younger years. It's like, if I didn't have a roster of options, I was like in that survival mode, hunting. Like, I need to fill these spots so I can feel good about myself. That's like my number one priority. If those spots aren't filled. And what I feel in that is this survival energy. I use the word hunting. It's like a diversification, and it really speaks to the larger relationship with the feminine, with the way that we treat the earth. We use the earth. We use women to soothe our own wounds of not enoughness or anything else that's there beneath the surface, where a healthy relationship with the earth would be, we work with the earth in a way that replenishes her and fills her up. And not with this energy of her resources are exhaustible, and so I need to take what I can now. I need to develop this list of women in case one falls off, I can replace with another. It's really, in my journey, it's been a connection, a lack of connection with the Divine Mother. This lack of belief that that level of nurturing and support is ever present. And so, then that leads to the wandering eye of I'm looking outside of my relationship just in case this falls away. And really the way through that, and that you've found, is the commitment to union and the true desire to be in partnership with a woman who you replenish, and you've taken care of everything on your side of the fence so that you're not using her as a band-aid to soothe your own wounds. And so it's a shift out of survival into I'm good. Like there's always a watering hole of abundance and love.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm glad you're saying this, because in reflection, my relationship to women did change when my relationship to the earth changed, which was also around the same time that I started working with plant medicine. And it felt like those things all worked together, where I started to pray to the land and to the water and started to give offerings to the land. And I never really thought about it as like, oh, I'm treating the feminine this way, so now I'm treating the feminine in the human form in this way. But that was definitely a big part of my life. And I'd say in general also just my path of being a man of God has also really changed that, because for me integrity is so important, and leaving anything, I can like feel the bits of ego that's laced in this, but leaving anything better than I found it, I feel like is a really big thing I try to live by. Like any space I go to, any piece of land, any human I interact with. And when I started doing that with the earth and with women, it really changed a lot for me. And I started to realize, I had a realization, this is maybe a couple of years ago, and there was a woman at a festival that I made out with, and it was like pretty, didn't get too intense or crazy. And I, in a ceremony, I actually thought about it, and I was like, I actually wish that I was just the man that like brought her to her tent. Like we didn't really need to make out. We had a good connection and it was fine. It was beautiful, but it was also, there was a part of me that was like, it wasn't really a fuck yes for me. I don't think it was really a fuck yes for her. And this is in my realization of like, well, how does a man of God treat this situation? It's like, takes her back to her tent, doesn't need to have a kiss goodnight. There was still that residue of trying to get some validation or get something. And, just see that this path of divinity and path of God, how much it's changed how I interact with the world and with women, especially.
Something that sticks out to me as you're sharing your story, as your relationship with the feminine evolved, is you said, after that relationship, I felt aligned in the way I was communicating with these women, and it did feel like I was being in integrity, even though I was connecting with different people. And then there was something that shifted, and I think that is just part of the path of evolution and devotion. It's like we're constantly learning more and more subtle ways to be in deeper and deeper integrity. And it's like what feels in integrity to me today is gonna feel like I'm not doing enough to the me 10 years from now. Yeah.
The path narrows.
Totally.
The path narrows with devotion. And that's a great example of it, because it was like, that was in my path. That was in integrity. And I was communicating so honestly. And it was really having, I'll share this. And I share some of the tools that when I work with men that I shared that I would utilize when I was connecting with these women, things like RBDSM, right? Just like being able to speak about relationships and boundaries and desires, having that conversation. And for a lot of women that I was connecting with that hadn't had a man communicate like this, they were like, whoa, this is insane. And so it was like, definitely it was part of the path at that point. And as I realized, I want a family and I want a queen by my side, and that's what I'm really here for. The path narrows, and some of those things that were in integrity before fall off.
Yeah. I love that phrase. The path narrows as you become more devoted and walk further. what used to be an option really doesn't feel like an option anymore.
Yeah.
Like I used to black out 4 nights a week in college. Like I physically cannot do that anymore. The options go away. And I think you make a great point for the men listening who are not in union and who are dating and who are on that part of their path where they're getting to connect with multiple women, of there's still a responsibility there. Like you gave those women a beautiful gift when you were able to communicate boundaries and desires in a way that they'd never experienced before. So the men who are at that phase have the sacred responsibility of sharing the blueprint of mature masculinity with those women, so women can say, oh, my standards just elevated and I'm no longer accepting less than this from a man. I had an experience a few weeks ago. There was another man, and he had been entertaining this woman to fly in and visit him, and he set a boundary and she didn't honor it, and he said, like, cancel the flight. And I was like, wow, like, that probably didn't feel good to her initially, but a day from now or a week from now, she's going to be like, wow, I've never bumped up against such a firm boundary from a man, and like, actually, like, I'm a little turned on, even though it didn't feel good in the moment.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah. I think something I teach a lot in leadership trainings is being committed to truth. And I feel like there's a big parallel of being a leader as a man, a leader of our own lives. I think this also can apply to women, but especially men, in being a leader of a relationship, and especially a single man, is be committed to truth. For me, it's actually the fastest and simplest way to find your queen, because if you're really in your truth, it's going to, filter out the women that are not a match for that truth. And what I've seen, and I have some friends that are single, what I've seen, especially in the more, say like more matrixy dating world, is it's like, one person wears a mask and the other person wear a mask, and then the masks meet and see if they're a fit, but then it's actually not the real relationship. It's like their masks are in relationship with each other. And I feel like it creates so much more heartbreak, because then there's this whole process of like falling in love with each other's masks, and then falling out of love because you're like, oh, that's not who I met, because it wasn't really them. Yeah, just being in truth from the get-go around what you're looking for, what you desire, what your boundaries are, all those things. It's liberating. It's so liberating.
I mean, I feel like this is something that comes back to what you were saying about knowing your center and being able to stay there, and knowing clearly what your desires, what your boundaries are, because I've had that experience that you're talking about in many ways, but it's really like the heartbreak is you meet someone and you think that's who it is. And then the longer you spend with someone, the harder it is to exit. So now there's this length of time that's spent trying to like recover the lover that you had, when really that was never the lover that was there in the first place. And so there's like a grieving of the loss of the life that you currently have with the mask, and then also the life that you thought you were going to have with someone else, when in reality, like, if, for the sake of this podcast, the man could just say, no, this is actually who I am. Don't come to me on that flight. That's not what I'm desiring. You aren't aligned with the path that I'm living. Then there's no decision to be made. It's like there is a lot of spectrums in intimacy, but there is a bit of a duality where like either you're in alignment or you're not. Like either you fit into whether this phase of life lasts forever or not. Either you are a match for where I am right now, or you're not. And even if something isn't meant to last forever, knowing whether something is truly a match in this moment is important. And that will like clearly lead you to what lasts forever or not. It's like those women that were in alignment because you were communicating well in that phase where the path was wider, fell away when they were meant to fall away, versus sticking around for longer periods of time because someone's not being clear with, who they actually are.
Totally. I feel like the biggest challenge that modern men face is also not really knowing what their non-negotiables are, not really knowing what they want. And this goes for more than just relationships with women. It's also like with their purpose. There's a lot of men that are like, not, just kind of like, okay, this is what society told me to do, or this is what society told me I should be attracted to, or this is the trauma that I've learned from my parents' relationship that I'm just going to replicate and mirror, so my nervous system has an opportunity to overcome it. And there's this lack of really knowing. And I see this in general, that people are just like, okay, well, I guess I'll just take what's here. I'll just like kind of take what I can get. And that is going to end up in disappointment. It is a counterfeit pleasure. It is a counterfeit joy. And that's a huge piece in the leadership trainings I lead. It's like, why are you here? What do you really want? What is your non-negotiables? What do you stand for? What's fucking important to you? Because if you can't answer those questions, then especially I'll say as a man that we want to be like anchored in something. If we can't answer those questions, it's so easy for the waves of life to just knock us off our feet, knock us off our balance.
Yeah. And I've been there, taking what I can get instead of claiming what I really want. And it does lead to this hollow halfway life. And a lot of guys continue down that path. It creates a lot of dysfunction. It creates mental illness. It creates things like suicide. And that's really the beginning of, the path was wide. Now you're not even on the path anymore. You've stepped outside of it. And so you feel fractured from the pieces of you that you left on that path. And now you're not even there anymore. And you did it with your body when you spoke about it. It creates this like wobble of like, okay, I'm like okay with anything, and I'm ambiguous and I'm different. It creates this dancey energy that one is quite unattractive to women, but to this point of knowing what you want, what your non-negotiables are, a lot of guys want to be more confident. Being clear on those things creates confidence. You don't just be confident. It comes from clarity and being able to communicate those things. And there's probably a guy or two or 100 listening to this that are like, yeah, I'd love that, but I don't know what I want. Like, I'm so disconnected from my needs because they were never met that I push them down and suppress them to the level that I'm completely disconnected from them. So what would you say or offer to a man who's having a really hard time with connecting with what he needs or desires from life or a partner?
Yeah, I think the best way to find more connection is first disconnecting from the illusions. So spending some time in nature, spending some time in silence, spending some time without a cell phone, without scrolling. I really believe that most people in that space, if they give themselves space, what is true or what their true desires, authentic desires, arise from the fertile ground of spaciousness. When there's spaciousness, what is really desired will arise. So I think that's one really big one. I think another really big one, I think every man needs good men in their lives, like a men's group or, a group of friends. But even a group of friends, if it's the same unconscious, unintentional, I mean, I've had a lot of male friends in my life, and some of those circles, they've all served a purpose at different times of life. I would say that certain circles didn't serve me in helping me get clear on what I want when it comes to purpose or women. But having a men's group or having, reflections or mentors that can really hold some space for you to process these things and bring things up and get clear. And this is a really big part of my life and what my 20s were like. We gotta get into the arena and try some things. We gotta taste some different things to see what flavors resonate with us. And I also see that a lot of modern men, and I'm not sure what kind of man is listening to this, but there's a lot of modern men that are afraid to even talk to a woman, afraid to ask a woman to go on a date. And I also, there was a time for sure, that was me too. I was really afraid of rejection. So I would only pursue women that I knew were going to say yes to me. And and getting in the arena, I think, is one of the best ways to see like what lands, what resonates, what feels good. Yeah.
I think too, part of that is it's not just what gets the response that you want, but what it feels like in your own body. Like, how did it feel to say that? How did it feel to connect with that type of woman or that type of activity or that type of environment? Because it's like there's some discernment in knowing what you want and need, but then there's also the being able to say, yes, this is still what I want and need, even though you've said no, even though it hasn't been met in this space, in this community by this woman, because then that gives you the information of, okay, it felt really good for me to say that I wanted that. That did feel true, and it can't be met here. So that just means it's true for me and it's not true for them. I need to like reorient into a different space.
For sure. And on that note of being able to express authentic desires and ask for what we want, this has been also a game changer for me. And in some of the period, maybe it was a year period of kind of my single, not open for a relationship, but open for connection, I was exposed to different tantra, like neo-tantra communities and temple nights and things like this, which it served a great purpose for me. It was very evolutionary. And to be able to actually like look a woman in her eyes and tell her really what I desired without sugarcoating or hiding any pieces of me, that was also a paradigm shifter. And to be able to like put out desires that felt really edgy and kind of raw, and then also to realize that sometimes they were received with an enthusiastic yes, it's like, wow, it's really powerful to ask for what I want. And now I see it. It's like how I do anything is how I do everything. I really feel there's so much of that in life. I see in the same way I get to ask for things that are off the menu when I'm on a plane or when I'm in a restaurant. There are these options, and having this practice of asking for what I want and being okay with getting denied. Oh man, I wish I did it when I was 20. I took the path I needed to, but I was so afraid for most of my 20s to get denied for things. Yeah.
Ask for what's off the menu is such a code.
Yeah.
And that the approach when we're talking about approaching women or the expression of authentic desires, it's always an opportunity to connect with the feminine, because one option, you get the outcome that you want and you connect with a human woman. The other option is you get rejected, and then what do you have to learn how to do then? You have to learn how to care for yourself. You have to connect with your inner feminine. And that's what gets in the way of a lot of guys risking rejection, is they have no tools or skills on how to care for themselves. So they think they need a woman to do that. There's no woman. I want to approach a woman because I don't have one to care for me, but I can't approach her because I can't care for myself. So she says, no, I'm fucked.
Yeah.
So it creates this like vicious cycle.
Well, then it becomes fuck the feminine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You become an
there's
incel.
resentment. Yeah, totally. And I think that's a huge piece too, that even with I've learned a lot from certain teachers and books like The Way of the Superior Man, and even some of those like very extreme takes that are like, in some ways, just be masculine, just be masculine. It's missing a lot. And there might be men that serves, or especially when, for me, that served a big purpose, that book, when for years, before I read it, it was like some years that I was into yoga, and I very much was in my feminine, go with the flow. It's all good. Whatever happens, like very whatever man. And that book, it was like the pendulum really swung the other way, where I was understanding yes and no, and like, okay, masculine. Yeah. And now I feel like I found this place where I feel like a really balanced human. And when I'm in relationship with the feminine, I know how to be very strong in my masculine. And when I'm by myself, I can be in either. Or when I'm in certain spaces where the space is held, but I'm not the space holder, so what's coming up is like an ecstatic dance, I can be very much in my feminine and just like let go and be in that creativity. And this is the gift for me as a human being, to be able to be in that full spectrum of life and to be able to experience and explore the beauty of the masculine and the structure and the, edginess and the firmness. Amazing. And it's also such a blessing to be able to be in the feminine, intuition, creativity, flow. And I think that there's also a misconception that men need to just be one thing. They need to just be masculine.
That feels like the miss in this is what a man looks like, and to your point, like that is really, I mean, I feel the same way about feminine embodiment stuff. It's like all of the feminine embodiment stuff is very like flowy, and this is what your sexuality looks like. This is like the phase of the collective feminine right now. This is what a healed feminine looks like. And that is helpful in a certain part of the journey. But then there is this rebalancing, and it's like, the podcast is called The Well-Worshipped Man, but it's not just being in your masculinity all the time. It's knowing what the masculine strengths are and what it feels like good in your body, and when to be in that polarity versus when to soften, and how to know when it's safe for you to express your, feminine traits and be in your emotions and have space held for you. So I think that that's a really good and important point, because it's like that's really what we're trying to break down in the intention of this podcast, is being the man in the relationship isn't just being in the masculine energy like 100% all the time, because that's not sustainable. That's actually the illusion that that's what's required is actually what's creating a lot of issues in partnerships.
For sure. And what I found too, through my experience and also having great sisters in my life and actually being in relationship with women, I found that women really want to be attuned to. It is such a deep need. It's really every nervous system, but I'll say especially women, the feminine, they really crave being attuned to. And if I'm not connected with my feminine, my feelings, if I'm not attuned to myself, I'm not going to be able to be attuned to that other person. And I see this as one of the biggest problems with conflict, especially if, a woman it's natural for women to have cycles and to have lots of feelings and lots of different emotions at different parts of their cycle. And if as a man, I'm just coming at this with my masculine problem solver mentality of like, let me fix you. A woman is like, that is not what is needed right now. I just want to be felt. I just want to be attuned to. And for me to be able to do that, I've had to do a lot of work around, okay, what does it feel like for me to be in grief or sadness or anger or rage? Like, what can I safely hold myself in that? And now both, I would say that my woman, my queen, and just women that I'm in the field with, whether it's students in a training or sisters, they're able to trust that I can hold them, and they get to open, they get to be themselves. It's like this safe space. They get to melt rather than having to like keep it all together all the time, which is also such a gift.
This key that women just want to be attuned to is so valuable. It's like, a past partnership of mine fell apart basically because I couldn't be attuned to in the way that I needed. So then when you can't be attuned to, it doesn't feel safe. So then parts of you disconnect, or, from this problem solving perspective, it's like, what I've found is that when a man can't attune to the emotional rupture that a woman is having, the answer is either trying to solve the problem or saying this shouldn't be a problem. And neither of those are helpful, because we're not saying that there's a problem. We're saying I'm having this experience, and I need to be held in it. And yeah, there's like some problem solving maybe later once everyone's grounded. But this idea that like that shouldn't be a problem because I don't have the capacity to attune to what you're feeling is really, really detrimental.
Totally.
And it's like that was like a huge process in my own journey of being like, oh no, like I get to be attuned to the level of sensitivity that I have. And if someone can't, then that's okay. But that's not like the space that I desire to be in, or at least the partnership, And when as a woman you come across a man who's like, oh, you actually like can attune to me, like we've had like a challenging conversation, and it's like, oh, like you actually can just like be in this room with me. Like what a gift. Actually, like these things that we build mountains out of don't have to be that big of a deal. If only we can like sit on the floor with each other.
Things need to be felt. And this might be a little controversial, but this is coming up for me as you're saying this. It's also really important for women to do the work where when they are having these big ruptures, that they're not then like on the attack. Because I've also experienced that where, perhaps a woman's feeling emotional for whatever reason, like, you know, and then like there's either there's manipulation that can happen, or somehow then becoming really critical. So there's both. And I just want to say that to some men listening. It doesn't mean that like when your woman is having a range of feelings that you're a doormat either. And I think I went through that stage where I was, for some time, it was like, okay, like I need to just, like whatever you say, I need to just appease you. And there's a big difference between like appeasing a woman and being attuned to her.
Totally.
And also this is a really, again, it's powerful, it's edgy, and it does take the attunement to sometimes be able to say like lovingly, no, that doesn't work for me, right? This is not working for me. To be able to say no, and it to me, it does. It's like this big ocean does get to have some banks to it, even in those big emotional moments. And that's really powerful. And I noticed that in my relationship now, if there is conflict, because we've kind of created those agreements together, it doesn't feel like this volcano. It feels like, sometimes a raging river, which is beautiful, but it has a little more structure.
And there are men out there who won't even approach these uncomfortable conversations with curiosity because they have this false belief that seeking to understand means that I'm agreeing with everything and endorsing everything that she's saying. And seeking to understand is not the same as agreeing. So approaching these conversations with curiosity is a great place to start. And having some emotional skills is also really important. There are guys who are listening to this conversation. They're like, I want to attune to my woman. I want to be able to hold space. Like, what do I need to do that? And it's like, no, you're like skipping a step, because until you meet those emotions within you, the anxiety, the nervousness, the desire to flee or blame or blow up, those will always be, I use the analogy of a jump scare to describe this. It's like you haven't met those things. So when they show up in her, you're like, I need to blame, I need to escape. But if you've met those things within yourself, they're familiar. And it will be a little bit different of how to work with them within her, but it will largely be the same. And so developing that capacity is how you can make more progress in those conversations, to use the masculine frame.
Hearing that too, what I'm feeling into, it's so important to have somatic awareness, because what you're talking about is that urge to run or to blame, or to have just the awareness of, okay, what am I feeling in my body right before that reaction comes, is such a key. Because then when that feeling arises, that sensation arises, there's this moment of pause. And I feel like such a big part of being a man, being a leader, being spiritual is responsibility. And I love the responsibility, the ability to respond rather than react. I feel like this is one of the most powerful forces we have as human beings, as men, as leaders. And it takes somatic awareness. It takes having those spaces to be able to feel. The modern man, the modern woman, the modern human, modern culture teaches us to numb. Modern culture says, work a job that you really don't like, sit in traffic, actually, let's rewind. Drink a shit ton of caffeine to get through the day, to get through the job that you don't like. If caffeine doesn't work, then maybe take a few pills or have some joints with it. Do whatever substances numb you, and then go to happy hour and drink some more, and then watch TV and movies and sports and all these things that just really encourage us to be numb and to unlearn that. I feel like this is part of, I'm on this journey of like, what does decolonization mean in my own body and my own being? And part of that decolonization for me is to be in touch with feeling, to be sensitive. And man, it's a game changer when we can do that as humans, when we can do that as men, is to actually have sensitivity as a superpower. Doesn't mean you're a pussy. It means actually like you can really understand and feel what's happening around you.
And somatic awareness is such a major key. For a decade in my life, I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't think I had feelings. I told a therapist, I don't feel anger. I just opted out of that one. I don't feel it. And, she set me straight on that. But my physical sensations were the window into my emotional world. So for men that are like, I don't know, like what I feel, it's like, just sit with yourself. It's like, do you feel some warmth in your chest? And it's, it's like, okay, I feel my shirt on my skin, but it's really, what do you feel between the front and back of your body? Like, is there a density? And like, find some words to describe that, develop a vocabulary. And then in my experience, my emotional world started to open up. And just to give the audience a tool here that's really helpful in these conversations we've been talking about is when you're having that somatic response, like I'm feeling some like heat in my chest. I've done some work, so I know that means that maybe I'm getting ready to blame her or get angry. The tool is just naming it. If I'm like, hey, I'm feeling a desire to like start blaming you.
Yeah.
It totally neutralizes it. It's like she sees my cards. It's like they're on the table. It's like almost impossible for me to like actually blame her now that I've named the desire to do so.
Yeah, love it. Along the same lines, the first men's circle I was ever in, this is in 2020 in Tulum. I did a men's circle, and the first thing we talked about was putting your weapons on the table. And it kind of old west, I think this is what they would do if they're playing cards or something. They'd put their guns, they'd put everything on the table. And in the same way, if I do that in my relationships, even before there's even a conflict, just to say like, hey, here are the ways that I may attack you in relationship, and I want you to know them, and I want to be able to name them. And that's what you're saying, is like, put your weapons on the table so that they're just visible. There's not these like hidden ways that we're getting at someone. I love this as a practice. I love this as a tool, and even as a prompt. And if you are in relationship, you also get to say this. Or if you're dating and discovering, it's like, what are the weapons that you use in relationship to like get at the other person? And to have some awareness around that is also it's a game changer.
I want to circle back to something you said a little while ago in partnership communication, where you were saying, and to know yourself enough to say lovingly no. And I think that's a really important space to get to, where your own boundaries, your own wounds large enough. One time, I was processing something, and Isaac was like, I don't know what that is, but it didn't come from here. And I was like, interesting. That's not yours. Okay. That's mine from before, I guess, know? Yeah. But it's like, I feel this really important teaching for everyone really, but for the masculine about the feminine and for creation itself, where it's like, the feminine wants to be all consuming, like the ocean kind of wants to swallow you. And really the deepest desire is for the ocean to know where the sand is, where she stops. But there's like this tiny kink in the background of like, or I could drown him, and the universe is kind of the same. It's like, if you're walking your path to Dharma, but the universe doesn't have to work as hard because you're not saying, no, I'm not, taking $20 for a 2-hour session, then it won't work as hard. The feminine won't be stable if she isn't asked to do so. And learning the skill of how to express, what you're actually willing to manage, but in a way that nourishes the relationship or nourishes your connection to the universe or to source, is much different than, the reaction that you're talking about. Yeah. And I'm curious if, we're talking about that in partnership, but I'm mentioning in relation to source, I'm wondering if there's any space in your journey of your Dharma where you've had to be like, lovingly, no, like I'm not going to take that energy exchange, or I'm not going to work with that person. And usually when we set them, it feels like, oh, this is going to be a loss of the opportunity. This is going to be a loss of the love.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. And for sure, there's a few different moments where that's happened. A big one for me was in 2020, leaving Lifetime Fitness. I was a yoga manager. I was on the national team. I had a really nice salary, and I didn't have to work very many hours. And just with everything that was changing in the COVID time and the mask wearing, and I just actually, it was a no to being in the United States. And part of that was leaving that position. And there was at first I was like, what did I just do? You know, like, whoa, I had such a comfortable thing. I was making a lot of money. I was like in a very comfortable place. And what I see is, as after that, the evolution that's occurred in me has been crazy, you know. And there's been different moments that I'd say are similar in my Dharma. Even my first yoga community at Lifetime in New Jersey, I got an invite from my teacher to move to Michigan and learn more and like study with him, and to say no to the community that I was in. Literally, I would have 100 people in a class, like on a Wednesday night, 100 people. And then I moved to a community where I started to have 8 people in a class. And it was kind of the same thing, where it was challenging to say no to that. And that's actually interesting, because I'm realizing those examples were more saying no to something I was already doing, rather than no to like a new opportunity. And there's been other opportunities. It's funny that Lifetime is coming up for me, but there was an opportunity to move to Minnesota to have like a really high position in the yoga team there, and go to their headquarters. And I was really considering it for a while, and it was a loving no. And I trust those things. What I've seen in my life, I'm glad you're asking me this, is I was a people pleaser for a really long time. There's still residue of it. So for me, saying no has been actually one of the biggest initiations in my life. And talking about having my center, one of the powers I have when I have my center is the ability to say no, the ability to own my no. And I've also, a mentor told me this: if I can't own my no, my yes is bullshit. Like, what does my yes mean if I can't say no to something? It's like my yes is meaningless. So it's been a big initiation. And the more that I have my center, the more that I can really honor the no's in my life.
Yeah. And the no's are tools to bring you back to center too. It's like these opportunities that were once aligned are no longer aligned, and they're actually contributing to a drift away from center. So you had to say no. And so you've worked really hard on this path of being able to drift less and return faster.
Totally.
But I'm curious, at the present stage of your path, what are the things that tempt you off center most?
I feel like my biggest obstacle to creation, it's interesting because it's a great tool, but is my phone. My phone for sure is the thing that tempts me and pulls me off my path quite a bit. I definitely get pulled into some low drama when I'm on my phone, and some things that don't allow for evolution. So I'd say that's a really big one. I'll also share, this is a little more vulnerable, but there's a piece of me, I got diagnosed with 2 autoimmune diseases in my 20s, Crohn's when I was like 21, 22, type 1 diabetes when I was like 27, and I'm 36 now. In my 20s, there was a lot of just challenging health times, you know, in and out of hospitals, diagnoses. It was a lot for me. And I also didn't really have the tools to process it. And there's this subtle part of me now that is like kind of entitled, feels entitled. It's like this entitled piece. It's like, you suffered so much, like now you get to just chill, and you get to, like, you know. And I'd say my judging mind says it's laziness, you know, but there's this entitled piece. It's like, oh, you can just chill. Like, okay, you got off a call, like go lay down for a minute and scroll, and, you know, 20 minutes later, whatever it may be. So I'd say that part is, it's like my inner predator archetype or gremlin archetype, whatever you want to call it, that tries to be like, oh, you don't need to work so hard because you've suffered enough in your life. And when I let that part win, I don't feel good. You know, it doesn't serve me. So I'd say that's one of the biggest ones that I have to exercise my no to. Yeah. And I see how those inner pieces is a reflection of the outer piece. It's like, if I can't say no to the inner, the parts of me, like the inner childish I think childlike is amazing, being childlike, being playful, but the childish, like avoiding responsibility, if I can't say no to that, then I'm not going to be able to say no to many other things in my life. If I can't say no to that inner predator that wants to keep me from evolving, then I'm not going to be able to say no to, maybe when a boss or something says something to me that's out of integrity. Yeah.
There's, I was listening to some social media, something a time ago, and they were talking about how like when someone is pushing boundaries or just saying like, yes, I get to express in, they were specifically talking about open relating. So it's like, I get to express in all of these ways. It's actually this internal desire to like have a boundary set. And I'm not necessarily saying that's true about everyone who's open relating, but for this process, it's like, you're mentioning in a relationship saying lovingly no, and it's like this little gremlin piece of all of us that wants to just whatever, relax and not do the work that we're here to do and not create and give ourselves like extra time scrolling or whatever we're doing. It's like that piece of us is the child that didn't have the boundaries set, that really is like, okay, like I'm just going to go over here. But what I really want you to do is tell me that I like need to do my homework.
Totally. Yeah. I actually just had this conversation. My mother's visiting and I just had this conversation, I think last night, where I was saying, we were talking about money and the stories. I was asking her about the stories that she had around money growing up. And I was like, what stories do you think that I received from you guys around money before I shared my own? I was just curious at her thoughts. And one of the things that was true that was that I got whatever I wanted. Like anything I asked for, I got, which was a paradox to what was talked about around money. But I was like, I don't think that really served me, because I could just ask for anything. And it was like, it was just reward without any action, right? I didn't like learn about really cultivating the soil and planting the seeds. I just got the fruit. And so it's similar with that. There's something that I want to share that's coming up around this, like lovingly no, because this also, it's like, how do I have the discernment of what does that mean? What is a no? Is it reactive? And this is also part of the commitment to truth. If I'm really in my truth, if it's a no for me, then saying that no, even if it causes some, doesn't feel so good, maybe for both parties, but if it's true, it's going to create evolution and liberation. And being able to get clear on that is like, what is that? What is that truth for you? And I'm really working to do this in my life, where I'm working to be as truthful as I can, like staying in the lane of honesty, being so committed to truth. And I see that I thought I was a pretty truthful person my whole life, but I see like all the little stretches or the little things. For me, how I would avoid truth is hiding some things, just keeping something like, okay, you don't need to know this. You don't need to see it. I'm not lying, but I'm hiding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To that last point, we talk about the difference between transparency and honesty. Honesty is like, if you ask me something, I'll tell you the truth. Transparency is, I'm just going to tell you immediately. And so that's really powerful. And then as you were talking, when it comes to truth telling, there's this immature approach to truth telling, or it's immature from my view of where I am now, of when I tell the truth, other people, it's going to resonate with other people immediately. And their reaction is going to be like, yeah, like I felt that. And what that leaves out is sometimes when you tell the truth, the reaction is, ugh, fuck,
Totally.
And it's like, sometimes the truth, water, when it falls on the earth, it takes some time to descend through the layers. And sometimes truth does that too. But people are so afraid to create that initial discomfort that they withhold truth. But the most activating truths do usually land that way. They cause like a disruption and a disturbance. And people have to be okay with doing that.
Totally. I think this is such a big part of being a leader too. One of the first things I share is, if you really want to lead, start getting used to not being liked by everyone. It's easy to stay in that gray area and just, everyone likes me. But if I'm actually taking a stand for what I really believe in, it's polarizing. And what's interesting too is polarity is attractive. Right. So we look at even like the president of the United States, super polarizing figure. And I mean, a lot of people really are obsessed and a lot of people really dislike. And there's something though that can be learned from that, of like being willing to, that's something I can respect, is like the willingness to not be liked by everyone. There's definitely a way to do it with heart, and to me, this is also when men talk about like having a strong spine. This is having a strong spine. I don't need you to like me. I know who I am. I don't need you to like me. I don't need your validation. I don't need any of it. It's okay if you totally disagree with me, but my spine is strong, and at the same time have a soft heart. Soft on the front side, hard on the back side. Like keep that energy alive. I think that's a really pivotal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about being an asshole. Like that's not the goal, to like act so far on the other end of the pendulum that you're an asshole. Right. It might be that a person in your life every now and then says that about you, but you hold true in your spine that your pure intent is not up for debate. And you think about the most powerful and notable people, they're also the most hated, Taylor Swift, Drake, LeBron James, and I'm thinking of Nick Young, who's a basketball player, kind of more obscure, but I think he has a clothing brand that's like most hated. And it's like he understands that as you step into higher levels of exposure and leadership, that the haters are going to like come out of the bleachers, and you have to be okay with that.
Totally. Yeah. And this goes back to the piece of, can I love myself enough? Like, am I taking care of my inner feminine, or can I love myself enough, be my inner, or protect that piece of me so that it actually is okay? It's not so dysregulating when I get a comment on social media that says I'm a cult leader or whatever it may be, whatever comes up. That's a huge piece, is like, can I really love myself enough to not be liked by everyone?
Part of that too, you mentioned before, just time and spaciousness and time and silence. It's like, I need to love myself, but I also need this strong spine. I need to be certain of my yeses, my nos, my hot takes. And one of the things I teach is like, there's really no such thing as confusion. Like if you are feeling confused, it's because you haven't gotten quiet enough. You know internally how you feel about everything. And maybe how you feel about something changes over time, but it's not confusing. It's like in this moment, if you really tap in, if you get in a room that's dark enough, quiet enough, around enough trees, it will be certain. And part of it is moving slowly. If I can move slowly enough, then even if this decision that I make isn't received well, I know that I moved slowly enough that I was certain of that decision, so that whatever the backlash is about it, I can hold it. And one of the things that, we mentioned maybe tapping into, I don't know how long we've been talking, but maybe we can just tap into it for a moment, is like morning devotional practices, and like just having your day start a certain way and maybe sprinkled in throughout as well. But I'm wondering how, we can go on retreats and we can go into nature, but how this like spaciousness is something that you're tapping into daily so that you can be certain of how you're moving through life.
Yeah. This is actually something that I've been working with a coach, and I really thought that with this coach, we were going to go like super high level, and he was going to give me all these like advanced codes of, now I'm ready for this. And he's just like, the soil. It's the soil. It's the sadhana, like cultivate the soil and it's going to be more fertile. Everything else will grow. So it starts with sadhana. And that's something I've been really focused on. And it's been a big part of my life for a long time, but it's evolved, it's shifted over time. And one prompt that he asked me was like, what does it look like? What does a world-class sadhana look like? And for me, there's some non-negotiables, right? Sitting in my altar every day. There's a certain chant song that I sing every single day. Moving my body every day, having some time in stillness every day, getting into nature every day. And then really though, like what's been developing for me is realizing that my sadhana or my spiritual practice, it doesn't just have to be these compartmentalized things. Like when I'm on a yoga mat or when I'm on a meditation cushion, it's like, how can I live with devotion with everything that I do? So when I'm washing the dishes, this is not always the case, but when I'm washing the dishes as devotion, where I'm like, cool, I'm doing this like through God, for God, from God. And if I can do that in those little small acts, I feel like, again, it just creates momentum in everything that I'm doing. So there's both. There's like for sure having an altar, having a spot to get still and silent every day, talking and listening to God, amazing. And having these, this just energy of like, it's not what you do, but it's how you do it throughout life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's the sacred space in the morning at your altar, and then there's bringing that into the mundane moments like the dishes or folding laundry.
Totally.
We always leave our audience with a piece of homework. So what is one piece of homework that you would assign to the listeners?
That's a great question. One piece of homework that I would assign is to ask 5 people that know you from different parts of your life. So a family member, a friend, a coworker, different people that know you from different things, and ask them for really honest feedback. What do you do really well? A couple things. And what are your opportunities for growth? And really invite them to give it to you in a way that really can serve and support you, because it's easy for people to be like, oh, you do everything great. But they know, like there are these pieces. Feedback is one of the most valuable tools that we have. And especially as a man, you know, I know for me, I used to walk around with a lot more armor on, and I wouldn't allow feedback to come in. Mm-hmm. And just opening our hearts to receive that opportunity for growth, and then to see and start to like apply these things in your life, super powerful.
Yeah. And as a sub assignment, I'd invite the listeners to Google the difference between the words criticism and critique. Yeah. Critique is very different than criticism. And something I've done in my life is I've named my red team. I call it my red team. It's Jessica and Brandon. And at least once a week, the intention is that they give me critiques.
Nice.
Because one of my hardest challenges is my need to defend and be right. Mm-hmm. So inviting in critique, like I've asked for that. Like I must soften and receive it.
Yeah. And in a similar way that helps soften. And again, feedback is such a big part of the culture that I create in the leadership trainings, yoga teacher trainings. It's really, really powerful. And my favorite people in life are the ones that are honest mirrors. Mm-hmm. But what really helps with people that are new to feedback is to actually ask for those 2 parts, what do I do well? And what are my opportunities for growth? So we're not just focusing on just one or the other. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Part of our mission with this podcast is to make it abundantly clear where the good men are, and to create such an assortment of examples for men to learn from that it becomes impossible for the collective to not be magnetized towards more mature masculinity. Mm-hmm. So who is someone that you'd encourage our audience to look to or learn from?
Some good men, some good brothers in my life. There's 2 that I want to share. Someone asked me this question recently, actually, about like who would they recommend for like to a man that either teach yoga or something along those lines to teach at a festival. And I was like, it's really interesting because it's hard for me to recommend someone that I don't know. Mm-hmm. I want to know really how they're living. I don't care what they say on social media. I want to know, like, how do you live? What do you do in the morning? How do you talk to people? So one, my mentor, and he's more well-known, but my mentor, Coach Brandon Collinsworth, amazing brother, man, lives with more integrity than, it's like, I get so many codes from his presence. Just how he shows up in the world is beautiful. And yeah, I love that guy. And then my brother, Parker, I've had the opportunity, Parker Haleen, I've had the opportunity to live with him for over 3 months, and just to see his consistency of how he shows up, the way he communicates with his partner, the way he holds his community. And like, I've really seen him hold, just like hold a standard, hold the bar pretty high for people, which can be, I've been in spaces where it can be uncomfortable and it can be like, oh, fuck, but it just brings out the best in a lot of people. So I'd say those 2 brothers.
Awesome. And then the final question is, any last thoughts, reflections that are on your heart, and where people can find you?
Yeah. Last reflections. yeah, just along the same lines of keep your center, know yourself, and be committed to truth. Those three things, I think it makes the rest of life so much more simple. And where people can find me, Alexander Awakens on Instagram, alexanderawakens.com is my website. And yeah, you'll find all kinds of good things that I offer, from online, on-demand yoga, meditation, breathwork classes to leadership trainings and retreats and all the goodies.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
Love you.
Love you too.